So unless you were born yesterday, you probably remember the 2020s. Or I guess it is still the 2020s. But I'm talking about the beginning, especially 2020 itself. You know, that time when most of us, or a lot of us, maybe all of us, probably not all of us, but a lot of us were in quarantine because of that virus that apparently you're not even allowed to say anymore. I don't know if that's still a thing. I just remember a time where you weren't allowed to say the name of it, which was stupid, but I don't know. If you're not allowed to say it still, I guess I'm not gonna say it, even though I haven't heard anyone talk about it in like a year. But we're not really talking about that. I want to talk about just that time in general. The time that we spent, or specifically me, that I spent in quarantine during 2020. So, obviously, the virus, it came to my country, and then we all went to lockdown. We couldn't leave our houses, and school was out. It happened in sometime in March, mid-March. So that cut off the rest of my school year that year. And essentially for the rest of that school year, we had school, but it was just the easiest, most insufficient assignments possible. So it essentially didn't feel like it existed. Didn't even have to wake up for anything. There might have been one or two virtual days where we had to tune in to Zoom calls, but there was never any reason to wake up early, so that was pretty neat. But I want to take a step back to the beginning of 2020. I remember the New Year of 2020. That night I was with some family members, and my one cousin and I were both the same age. We're both from the same era, I guess you could say. We were kind of sitting there feeling sad that the 2010s were ending because so many great memories were had in that time for us because we were kids then and everything. So I remember him saying to me, the cousin of mine, as soon as the ball dropped and it became 2020, midnight, whatever you call it, New Year's, we started hearing people lighting fireworks off outside, and he said to me, look, people are already shooting guns at each other, or something like that. But I was like, yeah, they are, because we were essentially thinking, oh, the 2010s are over, now nothing's ever gonna be good again. The 2020s are never gonna be able to recreate what the 2010s did for us, so, he was just joking around that things are going terribly already for the 2020s. And little did we know the whole virus thing would happen and all the other stuff that happened that year. But the reason I'm making this video is because I personally think that that whole time was slept on. Now, that might be kind of controversial to say because most people were all like, oh, 2020 sucked, it was the worst year ever, quarantine was terrible. I don't think so. Maybe not 2020 as a year, but just the quarantine time in general was honestly a really good time for me. I don't know if I could say it was the best time of my life. It definitely wasn't, but it was a pretty good time, maybe even a very good time. And the reason I say that, okay, before I get to that, first of all, 2020 looking back, I remember as I progressed through the year and more people were agreeing that it was like the worst time to be alive and everything was terrible and so much bad stuff was happening, sometimes I was just like, okay, it's not as bad as you're saying it is. You're just trying to make some things sound like they're bad because a couple bad things have happened already, so you're trying to make it seem worse than it is. And yeah, that sounds controversial right there, definitely, but the main thing I'm talking about here, this is gonna sound stupid, but if anyone remembers that stupid murder hornet scare that happened, where they found like a singular dead wasp in a singular state in the United States, and then everyone had some hysteria where they thought we were all gonna get killed by bugs. Like, that especially was just like, okay, there's nothing bad about that. You found a single bug and it was dead. They're not gonna overrun the country because you found that. Like, the only reason that story became so widespread was probably just because people wanted to make the time in that era seem really bad, because there is obviously the trend of, what was it, like wildfires in Australia and the virus, so they were just like, oh, yeah, this is a slightly negative thing potentially. Let's talk about it so that people hate this time more. I don't know. I guess to me, it was harder to actually see that whole era as a bad time just because, I mean, I'm still young. I'm not an adult still, but then I was even younger because that was 3 years ago now, which is weird. But obviously, then I was younger and I didn't really, like, if I was an adult, I would have had responsibilities. I would have been facing the whole money struggle that came with the whole virus thing and trying to actually run a household during a time that I've never experienced before. But I was, and I still am, just a kid/teenager, so it didn't really mean anything to me because I couldn't relate. But essentially, 2020, and honestly, the quarantine extended beyond 2020. I mean, I don't think I went back to physical school until, when was it, 2021 maybe? Like the second half of the school year after the one I got at. That made no sense. You know what I'm trying to say. Maybe. I don't know. But that old time, there's just so many reasons why I can say it was good and not bad, and I don't know if people would agree or not. Probably not, because they're kind of personal, but I still want to talk about why I liked the time. So first of all, I'm an introvert, so I guess automatically any other introverts would kind of agree that the time was good because, we were in our houses and we didn't have to see people and we didn't have to go to school or do whatever. We didn't have to go outside. So for me, that was very great when I learned that we would be getting that 1 week off of school on that fateful March day, which then devolved into the rest of the school year and then half of the next school year as well. But honestly, I liked it when I realized it wasn't going to end for a while. I liked being able to be at my house and not have to go to school, and I liked school essentially fading away because all of the schoolwork and stuff we had to do for the rest of the year was just kind of a joke. Like, I finished everything in like 10 minutes every day. It was just essentially meaningless for the rest of that whole school year, and it essentially made that school year easy. That was my final year in middle school, so it was a very simple send-off from that, so that was all pretty good for me. And then, of course, the next year when I started high school, I was doing virtual Zoom calls for that first half of the year. That was kind of annoying, but at the same time, I got to sleep in some days, depending on whether or not I actually had to attend a Zoom call or not. And honestly, I really liked that, just being able to be at my house, even if I did have to do the dumb Zoom calls. Of course, that year the assignments were tougher because I was actually doing Zoom calls and stuff and actual virtual stuff. Meanwhile, at the end of 8th grade, it was just random, like, 2-second assignments that they threw out because it wasn't planned, obviously, but by the time I got to the next school year, they could throw something together to make the kids that were still virtual do, because honestly, by that point, we didn't have to be virtual, but I was. Not because of the virus, per se, but I mean, well, I didn't make the decision, but if I did, it would have been just because I wanted to not go to school and just be in my house by myself. Obviously not by myself, but away from a social setting, I guess you could say. Also, 2020, that time where I was just able to be home all day, every day, it just felt like something new and fun. Like, at some points I felt like, oh yeah, this is a really epic movie scene and I have to survive this quarantine. Even though I don't think I got sick once the entire time and it was not challenging. But I still thought that and it felt pretty action packed, I guess. Also, during that time, I started to go outside a lot more and I did a lot of exercising. And by exercising, I don't mean like weightlifting or anything. I just mean like I took a lot of walks. But that was still cool because exercising is good for you, I think. Well, not think. It is good for you. So that was pretty good for me. Except at the same time, I'm pretty sure I ate pizza once every day during quarantine. Like I was just chowing down on bagel bites and Elio's frozen box pizzas for lunch every single day between virtual school classes. Actually, I think I had 2 virtual classes in the morning and then 2 classes that didn't need Zoom calls after, so I had a pizza after the Zoom calls were over, which I would never do again. I'm just gonna put that out there. I'm a very healthy eater, or at least I try to be, so looking back on the fact that I ate pizza every day for lunch might be the worst thing that came out of that for me. And I also ate a lot of cake and desserts. We had a lot of cake over quarantine. But what's funny is that I think between when quarantine started and ended, I was actually thinner and I lost some weight, which doesn't make sense to me. I'm no like nutritionist, but based on the stuff I was eating, I feel like I would have gained weight from how much pizza and cake I ate over quarantine, but I was just enjoying the time. Also, I want to talk about gaming because that was one thing that really got me through it. Not that I was struggling to get through it, just that there was some games that I really enjoyed during quarantine, especially Animal Crossing New Horizons, which was kind of just well, obviously they didn't plan to put it out during some random pandemic that took over the world, but like the fact that that game, which I had already planned to get anyway and had pre-ordered for that time, just happened to come out nearly at the exact same time we went into quarantine was just really great because I was able to play that game with one of my friends. We both played it while we were both in quarantine, obviously, for a pretty long duration. Honestly, we probably played it throughout the entire thing, and it was just really fun to play that every day with no or not much responsibility from school. So that was pretty nice that came out at that time. And also Minecraft. I did a lot of Minecraft with some friends at that time. We had a server or two, like a survival one and a creative one. We also did a lot of build battles and all those online mini games. So that was pretty fun too. And also like during quarantine, I think with some family members, obviously the ones I live with, I think we like binge watched at least 2 different movie series. I think we watched like every single Terminator, every single Pirates of the Caribbean / Caribbean. Who cares how you pronounce it? And also every single oh man, what was that other one? I think Jaws. I'm not as much of a movie enthusiast anymore, but like, well, I feel like there's a lot of things I actually did in quarantine that I'm not really much of a fan of anymore, but I did it then and it was fun. It just felt like so much happened in that time that I just never did before and never could do just because I was at my house every single day. And it just felt like such a weird but also cool time. And I think one of the other reasons it's so fond to me is just because as soon as I went back to physical real school following quarantine, it had been like a year since I had been there, so it was a very big shock for me, especially because I missed the whole first semester of high school because I was virtual, so just suddenly going in there when almost everyone else was already used to it by that point was pretty annoying. And also every single year I've been at high school since I've come back, which isn't many, but still a few, or every single semester, I should say, they've sucked, and I don't like it, so I think my mind kind of just associates the time that came beforehand, that whole quarantine era, where I was at my house, with just simply being better than it is now, because I would take that time over right now any day just because of how bland high school feels and has been for me. But obviously, I don't want to revolve my entire life and base my personality around school, which it seems a lot of people do for some reason, but yeah, who am I to judge other people, I guess. Anyway, I think I've run my mouth long enough about that time, between, what is it? I guess March 2020 to winter 2021, maybe? I forget when I even went back or when it ended. I know it ended a lot of different times in different places and stuff. But what I've been trying to say is that, obviously, I liked that time, even though I know a lot of people didn't, and I think it just comes down to whether or not you are an introvert or an extrovert, because obviously if you're going to be at your house all day every day and you don't like people, that's good for you, and it was good for me then, but now it's over, so it's always cool to think back on that time, whether you liked it or not. So yeah, I'm not trying to make anyone appreciate that time, I'm just saying my opinion on it, so yeah, I guess like or subscribe or something, and thanks for watching this video.